Now we're going to go to our exclusive with longtime Wheel of Fortune host Pat Sajak. He's sitting down for his first interview since he had that emergency surgery that temporarily forced him off the show.
For decades, Pat Sajak has been a television icon, spinning the Wheel of Fortune for millions of viewers. His charm, wit, and easygoing personality made him a household name, and fans never imagined the day he might walk away from the show. But now, years after his departure, Pat has finally spoken out, and the reason behind his exit is both surprising and deeply personal. In a candid interview, Sajak revealed that leaving wasn't about money, ratings, or even creative differences. Instead, it boiled down to something far more human: time, priorities, and the desire for balance. After decades of tireless work, long taping schedules, and living under the constant pressure of public expectation, Pat realized he needed to step back to focus on his family, his health, and personal passions that had been on hold for far too long. He also admitted that hosting a show like Wheel of Fortune came with unexpected pressures: behind-the-scenes tight production deadlines, constant travel, and the weight of maintaining perfection night after night. The cheerful, effortless persona audiences saw on camera masked the stress and sacrifices that few knew about. Pat's confession gives fans an intimate look at the man behind the smile, revealing the human side of a television legend. It explains why someone so successful, so beloved, could make the shocking decision to leave the show at the height of his career, and why it was the right choice for him. For the first time, he's telling the story, and it completely changes the way viewers see his time on television. Pat Sajak had already become a familiar face on television when he took the helm of Wheel of Fortune in 1981. But even then, no one truly understood the pressures that came with hosting one of America's most beloved game shows. From the outside, Sajak's world seemed effortless: a friendly grin, witty banter, and flawless execution every night in front of millions of viewers. But behind the scenes, the reality was far more complicated. From the very first taping, Sajak quickly realized that hosting a show of this magnitude was not just about smiling at contestants or spinning a giant wheel. It was about precision, timing, and constant vigilance. Each episode required hours of preparation, memorizing dozens of puzzle solutions, and coordinating perfectly with co-host Vanna White, the production team, and the contestants. A single mistake could derail an entire segment or confuse the live audience. And with cameras rolling and millions watching at home, there was no room for error. Even the fun, light-hearted moments were calculated. Pat often had to improvise witty comments while keeping the pacing perfect, ensuring that commercial breaks, camera shots, and puzzle reveals all aligned seamlessly. The audience saw effortless charm, but it came from years of meticulous effort, rehearsals, and the kind of attention to detail few viewers ever noticed. Beyond the technical demands, Sajak also carried the weight of public expectation. Wheel of Fortune wasn't just a game show, it was a nightly ritual in households across America. Fans relied on his steady presence, his humor, and his professional demeanor. Every misstep or awkward pause risked disappointing millions. Pat later confessed that this invisible pressure, compounded over years, often left him exhausted and anxious, even though no one on set could see it. The early years also revealed the physical toll. The long taping schedules were grueling. Multiple episodes were recorded in a single day, sometimes with hours of waiting between takes. Pat recalls feeling drained after long sessions, yet he never wanted to show fatigue on camera. To maintain the persona audiences loved, he pushed through exhaustion, swallowed stress, and kept smiling even when behind the scenes. He was fighting the urge to rest or slow down. Despite these challenges, Sajak found deep satisfaction in his work. He loved connecting with contestants, engaging with audiences, and being part of a show that brought joy to millions. But even in the midst of that fulfillment, a quiet realization began to form. The demands of Wheel of Fortune came at a cost. The late nights, constant travel, and unrelenting public scrutiny were slowly taking their toll. And though he didn't leave the show for many years, the seeds of his eventual decision were already being planted. Years later, Pat would finally speak openly about these pressures, admitting that the friendly, easygoing host fans adored was only one side of the story. Behind the iconic smile was a man aware of how much the job demanded, how much it drained him, and how much he was sacrificing for the show's continued success. It was that human side of Pat Sajak, the man who loved the show but knew he couldn't do it forever, that would eventually lead him to make the shocking decision to leave at the peak of his career. As the years went by, Pat Sajak's role on Wheel of Fortune became more than just a job. It became a constant, unyielding responsibility. While viewers saw him as the calm, witty host who could effortlessly banter with contestants and co-host Vanna White, the reality behind the scenes was far more demanding and often exhausting. The biggest challenge, Pat admitted years later, wasn't memorizing puzzles or delivering lines. It was the relentless schedule. Episodes had to be filmed back to back, often in long stretches that left little time for rest. Multiple shows could be taped in a single day, with only short breaks in between. Every day required energy, focus, and a level of precision that left him drained. By the end of the week, he said, I was physically exhausted, but had to maintain the same energy, charm, and professionalism as if it were the first taping of the day. Even the seemingly small things added up. Pat was required to constantly monitor contestants' reactions, cue camera angles, and adjust his delivery to suit both live and recorded audiences. There was no room for improvisation unless it matched the show's pacing perfectly. One misstep could ruin a segment or require another take, sometimes delaying production for hours. The stress of keeping every detail perfect, day after day, took a toll on him more than viewers could imagine. Beyond the technical demands, there was the invisible weight of expectation. Wheel of Fortune wasn't just a game show, it was a nightly ritual for millions of Americans. Families, loyal fans, and casual viewers all tuned in expecting perfection. Pat felt personally responsible for maintaining the show's reputation and keeping the audience engaged. Any misstep, no matter how minor, felt magnified under the national spotlight. This pressure extended beyond the set as well. Pat traveled constantly, attending promotional events, interviews, and press appearances. The very schedule that allowed him to remain a beloved public figure also meant sacrificing personal time. Long hours and extensive travel caused him to miss family milestones, vacations, and even quiet moments at home. While the world saw his polished smile and quick wit, the private Pat was often exhausted, stressed, and longing for a slower pace of life. He also began to realize that his own health and well-being were being affected. Maintaining energy and positivity week after week required constant vigilance, careful routines, and an internal fortitude that few could sustain indefinitely. The more he reflected, the clearer it became that even though he loved the show, he could not continue indefinitely without risking burnout. Despite all this, Pat's love for hosting never waned. He genuinely cared for the contestants, relished the opportunity to entertain millions, and took pride in the legacy of Wheel of Fortune. But the cracks in his endurance grew more noticeable each year. Behind every cheerful spin of the wheel, there was a man silently weighing the cost of his commitment, the joy of the show, against the personal sacrifices it demanded. Years later, when he finally revealed why he left, Pat's explanation wasn't about drama or dissatisfaction. It was deeply human. He needed time to reclaim his life, focus on health, and spend precious years with family. The confession revealed the unseen struggles behind decades of television success and gave fans a perspective they had never considered what it truly meant to be the face of a beloved show. By the time Pat Sajak had been hosting Wheel of Fortune for decades, he had become more than a familiar face on television. He was a national institution. People didn't just recognize him, they trusted him, laughed with him, and welcomed him into their homes night after night. But even as his public image radiated ease and charm, the private reality behind the scenes was far more complex. Pat often reflects on the invisible weight of being a television icon. Hosting a live-to-tape game show might look effortless, but every movement, every word, every glance was scrutinized not just by the production crew, but by millions of viewers at home. Even a minor stumble or slight misstep could feel catastrophic. "You're always on," Pat said in his interview. "Even when you think no one is watching, they are. And that expectation doesn't go away." This constant vigilance was exhausting. Days were long, schedules were packed, and the work rarely allowed for a genuine pause. Every week brought rehearsals, tapings, press appearances, and interviews. Beyond the physical fatigue, the mental strain was considerable. Pat had to keep his energy high, his commentary sharp, and his persona upbeat all while managing the stress of staying perfect in front of cameras and in front of millions of people who had come to rely on him for consistency. What many fans didn't realize was how much he sacrificed in his personal life. The demanding schedule meant missing family events, important milestones, and quiet, restorative time. Pat revealed that for years, he had hidden a sense of longing, a desire to be more present in the lives of those he loved. "I loved the show," he admitted, "but there's only so much time, and I had to make a choice about what mattered most." Pat also acknowledged that hosting the show required a rare kind of emotional discipline. While contestants celebrated big wins or grappled with disappointments, he had to maintain composure, empathy, and humor simultaneously. Every episode demanded emotional resilience, and over time, that resilience can be taxing. Behind the bright lights and cheerful spins of the wheel, he faced the weight of constant expectation, a pressure that few truly understand. Despite these challenges, Pat's passion for the show remained strong. He adored working with Vanna White and cherished the bond they built over decades. He valued the production team and the joy they brought to the show. Yet, he also realized that the time had come to step back before the pressures of the role began to outweigh the joy it brought. When he finally made the decision to leave, it wasn't sudden. It was the result of careful reflection, a recognition that his life outside the show deserved attention, and that stepping away would allow him to reclaim a sense of balance, health, and personal fulfillment. He didn't leave because he disliked the show or because he was dissatisfied. He left because he wanted to live fully beyond the studio walls. In confessing the real reason behind his departure, Pat Sajak gave fans a rare glimpse of the human side behind the icon. The man who had been spinning wheels, cracking jokes, and keeping millions entertained wasn't invincible. He was someone who recognized his limits, valued his personal life, and made a courageous choice to prioritize what truly mattered. When Pat Sajak finally stepped away from Wheel of Fortune, it marked the end of an era not just for the show, but for television history. After decades as the cheerful, witty, and dependable host, many fans were shocked. How could someone so successful and beloved leave at the height of his career? Pat's confession revealed the truth. It was never about fame, fortune, or creative differences. It was about reclaiming his life. Over the years, Pat had learned the hard way that success on television came with invisible costs. Long taping schedules, relentless public scrutiny, and the constant demand for perfection had worn on him. While viewers saw charm and ease, the man behind the wheel was constantly evaluating how much energy and emotion he had left. Every taping required precision, every contestant interaction demanded attentiveness, and every show was a reminder that millions were watching. Over time, the weight of these responsibilities began to take its toll, even as he loved the show. The choice to leave became clearer with each passing year. Pat realized that staying indefinitely would require compromising the balance he had long neglected: time with family, personal passions, and his own well-being. For decades, he had deferred personal priorities for professional excellence, but eventually, he understood that the life outside the studio deserved attention too. Pat's departure wasn't dramatic or confrontational. He didn't need headlines or a public spectacle. Instead, he made a deliberate, considered decision to leave on his own terms. He finished his commitments, said goodbye to the team he had grown to trust and respect, and stepped away quietly. It was a move rooted in integrity, self-awareness, and the courage to prioritize what truly mattered over the allure of ongoing fame. Reflecting on the decision, Pat emphasized that leaving Wheel of Fortune allowed him to rediscover himself. Without the pressures of nightly tapings and public expectations, he could focus on personal pursuits, travel, and spending time with those he loved. It also gave him the freedom to enjoy life on his own terms without the constant scrutiny that had defined his career for decades. The revelation of why he left gives fans a new perspective on the man they had admired for years. Pat Sajak wasn't just a smiling host spinning a wheel. He was a human being navigating immense pressures, making sacrifices, and ultimately choosing the path that aligned with his values. His confession underscores a universal truth. Even icons need to step back, recharge, and prioritize their lives beyond the expectations of others. In the end, Pat's choice to leave Wheel of Fortune isn't just a story about a television career ending. It's a story about courage, balance, and self-respect. It reminds audiences that success is multifaceted and that even the most accomplished individuals must sometimes make difficult decisions to protect their well-being. Pat Sajak walked away not because he wanted to, but because he needed to, and in doing so, he set an example of living life intentionally.